Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Get Safe Online Rwanda's monthly webinar. And this webinar is something that Get Safe Online Rwanda does on a monthly basis as part of its campaign to promote online safety amongst populations in Rwanda who are online. And I'm very happy to welcome our panelists here. But before I do, let me just also welcome the attendees who I can see coming in. We have 11 participants so far, and please keep on coming in, and we'll be reading answering your questions and comments later on. So like I said earlier on, this particular webinar is on financial services and cybersecurity. Many of us know that around the world, cybersecurity threats have moved from individuals and individual institutions to financial services at large. And so this means that financial institutions, financial systems demand heavy investments in cybersecurity to counter aggressive criminal activities present and also prevent service disruptions, especially since COVID-19, the pandemic that kicked off in 2020. A lot of people around the world are relying on online services, on digital transactions. So that, as positive as it is in terms of convenience, in terms of just making it easier for people to conduct financial transactions online, it also brings with it renewed threats when it comes to cyber attacks on financial services and financial institutions. So the point of today's webinar, I'm very happy to say, is to talk to our experts here who are going to share with us their comments, advice, and practical tips on how financial institutions can better protect themselves, and how individuals, consumers, can also better protect themselves when conducting financial services online. So I'll kick off with our guests and introducing them. We have with us Sarah Story-Cookson. I'm sure many of you know her. She's a regular on this Get Safe Online Rwanda webinars. And Sarah is the Communications Director at Get Safe Online. Sarah, very happy to have you on this webinar.
Hi, Diana. Lovely to be here and look forward to hearing the discussion.
Thank you. We also have with us, I'm very happy to welcome Ghislaine Kayigi, who is the Chief Cybersecurity Standards Officer at the National Cybersecurity Authority. Ghislaine, great to have you once again on these webinars that Get Safe Online Rwanda promotes and organizes on a monthly basis.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks for having me.
Great. We also have with us Deborah Uwera, again, not a new face. We've seen her before. Deborah is the Senior Inspector, Bank Supervision, National Bank of Rwanda. Deborah, great to have you on the show.
And I'm glad to be back.
On the webinar, sorry, not sure. Also joining us, a new face here is Andrew Bukangwa, who he wears many hats, but he is with us today as a cybersecurity analyst and researcher. Andrew, great to have you on this webinar today.
Thanks a lot, Diana.
Great, good to have you all the way from Japan.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, you know, we're here. The topic for this month's webinar is financial services and cybersecurity. It's increasingly important for cybersecurity challenges to be taken into account by financial services, especially when it comes to protecting institutions and protecting the products they offer to consumers who transact online financially. So the first question I am going to ask is to you, Sarah. And Sarah, Get Safe Online, and maybe I should have mentioned that before. Get Safe Online Rwanda is a result of a partnership between Get Safe Online, based in the UK, and the Ministry of ICT in Rwanda, as well as the Rwanda Information Society Authority. So Get Safe Online Rwanda was developed in 2020, and it has been conducting a series of campaigns since then in 2020, promoting online safety on every topic imaginable when it comes to online behaviors. And Get Safe Online Rwanda also has a website that has practical advice, user-friendly advice on online safety from businesses to online safety of children to individuals, everything you can think of. getsafeonline.org.rw, and all that is translated comprehensively into Kinyarwanda. So these are some of the really great interventions by Get Safe Online, Get Safe Online Rwanda, and the activities Get Safe Online Rwanda has been doing. So the first question I have for you, Sarah, is when it comes to financial services and cybersecurity, especially in the financial sector, what are some key safety advice tips that Get Safe Online offers or promotes, especially in the countries that it works in? And these are over 25 countries. So if you could share with us some key tips in this regard. Over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. So Get Safe Online, we very much look at providing advice for the consumer, for the people on the ground. And so when you're looking at financial services, banking online is one of the key areas that affects people on the ground. And the two things absolutely individuals need to protect is their password and their personal details when anything associated with banking online. And there's a few things you need to just think about as a person. You know, you can be tricked by phishing emails or vishing, and people can fool you into giving away your banking details, your personal details, or your password. There's a risk always with identity theft, and that might come through viruses or spyware that accidentally infiltrates your computer. And again, the third one is malware. So again, just accidentally clicking on the wrong link in an email, for example, and ending up with malware on your computer. That can be a way that cyber criminals can extract personal information and banking details from your computer, and cause risk to yourselves. So when we're looking at advice with safe online banking, there are a few tips that we say just to look out for and just to think about when you're using online banking. Firstly, never disclose your password or personal information to anybody that you shouldn't. So, for example, you might get an email or a phone call or a letter from somebody pretending to be your bank. You know, banks will never ask for personal information or your password or your PIN through an email or through a phone call. You know, it would be something much more direct in the bank, etc. So don't disclose your password or personal information to somebody that you are not 100% sure is your bank. When you're doing online financial transactions or you're using, you know, accessing your banking details, always make sure you use a secure internet connection. So anything to do with finance, don't use a free public Wi-Fi. Just because, you know, that could be susceptible to somebody looking at your information that you wouldn't want to, a cyber criminal, for example. When you're purchasing online, look for HTTPS at the beginning of the website name, and that can be seen in the bar where you type in the website address that you're going to. HTTPS doesn't guarantee that it's safe, but does give that reassurance that it should be a secure site and it should be safe. If you're going to your banking website to check your account or to look into anything, always type in the bank website directly into the browser. Don't click on a link that you've seen on an ad or through an email. Just type in the address in the browser yourself so you know that you're going to the correct banking website, just to be extra safe and be sure. We would always recommend using a strong password. So that would be 3 random words, replacing some of the letters with a number, for example, or symbol. So you might replace an O with a 0, for example. But always use a strong password and always use a strong PIN if you're asked to choose a PIN. So not your birthday, not your husband's birthday, etc. Make sure it's secure and random. We would also say, and again, we've got cybersecurity experts on the panel here today, but certainly make sure, you know, any antivirus, any anti-spyware software is all up to date on the computer you're using. That just means it will filter through and protect you from unwanted viruses infiltrating your computer. And when it comes to banking, always check your statements, you know, even if it takes a bit of time, just browse through, check there isn't anything strange that you haven't bought or paid for. And if you spot anything, raise it straight away with your bank. And the last point, I feel like I've given you lots of tips here, but the last point is that if you are looking at your bank account details in public or in the office, just be aware of shoulder surfers, anybody sort of behind you looking over at your details that shouldn't be, just something to be cautious of. But there's lots more detail on our website, Get Safe Online, so do have a look, but hopefully that gives you a good flavour of some tips to watch out for when you're dealing with financial services online. Thanks, Diana.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, I believe those are quite comprehensive tips on you know, what to do when you're online when it comes to financial services and financial transactions. We'll definitely be coming for you just to get a bit more detail on some of the things that you mentioned. So thank you very much for that. My next question, I would like to take it to Ghislaine. Ghislaine, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. I know NCSA is really busy, especially with some new developments countrywide when it comes to cybersecurity and just you know, addressing cyber challenges. So Ghislaine, if you could just kick off by telling us just a brief overview of how the National Cybersecurity Authority works with institutions to promote cybersecurity in financial institutions in Rwanda. And the second part of the question is to do with, if you could share with us how the new Rwandan data protection and privacy law, how it will address some of these challenges when it comes to cybersecurity threats, especially in the financial service sector. Over to you, Ghislaine. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I'll first thank Sarah for like a summary of key security tips that an individual or an institution should ensure that they follow, and they can sound very simple, but actually making sure that you follow each one of them can assist someone or help someone not to fall victim to these cybersecurity incident or threats. And to answer your question, Diana, on what NCSA, the National Cybersecurity Authority, is doing to highlight the importance of cybersecurity, especially in financial institutions. One, since the operationalization of NCSA, we've been working closely with the central bank, which is represented here by Deborah, and I think she'll highlight more on what they're doing, but one of the things we're keen on doing is to work closely with the sector regulator of the financial institution or of the financial sector, which is BNR, because it's the umbrella organization that deals or follows up with all these financial institutions on a daily basis, and to help in following up with the particular policies or measures that may be given out to financial institutions to help them secure their services, to help them secure their information, to help them or to assist them in making sure that their data is secure, but also the client's data is secure. And one of the things that we've done is working with the central bank to make sure that one, there's the cybersecurity regulations in place. There's regulations that the central bank has published to help the financial institutions make sure that they are resilient against these cyber threats. I think Deborah will talk more on that. And when we talk about the financial institution, it's not only banks, but it's banks, it's mobile money service providers, it's insurance companies, and other institutions that fall in this category of financial institution. And another thing that we've done is to we conducted a cybersecurity awareness month last year. The first one we conducted with NCSA. We conducted it closely with also the central bank, where we were developing content across different media, but also encouraging the banks, different insurance companies to develop content or to remind their clients that use their services some of the key security tips that they should put in practice. Some of them, Sarah has already mentioned them, but to make sure that if you're using a certain banking application online, what should you remember to do to make sure that your money, that your information is kept secure, and that no one will take advantage of you not knowing how to protect yourself while you're using those financial services. And another thing is to, as NCSA, to provide support for any individual that is that suspects there's something suspicious happening on their account or their devices, or the platforms that they access to use these different financial services that are available online. One, we have a facility called the Rwanda Computer Security Incident Response Team, which is a team of people that is available 24/7 to give support to anyone that thinks they have been victim to these cyber crime, or they suspect something suspicious is happening on their accounts or their emails. But also one of the key things is to make sure that we are working closely with the financial sector regulator, which is the BNR, to make sure that the sector is resilient and secure against the different cyber threats. On the second point, regarding the new law on protection of personal data and privacy, this is a law that was really required and important, particularly at this moment, where we see that we are now doing business or transacting with local firms, international firms, and the country needed some regulation or practices to highlight what guidelines that institutions that process personal data of individuals that are in Rwanda, either Rwandans or non-Rwandans, what they should make sure that they implement to ensure that the privacy of the people is ensured. So the law on the protection of personal data requires or ensures the protection of personal data and also the privacy of individuals as they process their data. Meaning the processing of data, it includes even when you're collecting that data, when you're storing that data, who are you sharing the data with? For example, if I'm going to open an account with a certain bank in Rwanda, or with us, or I'm subscribing to a certain insurance scheme, the data I will provide, the personal data I will provide, I have to be sure that it will be the institution I'm giving it to will implement the required guidelines as stipulated in the law to make sure that my personal data is secure. And one of the requirements of the law is that now to process any personal data, a data controller, a data processor, or a third party that processes personal data will first need to get consent from the data subject or the owner of the personal data. and that encourages or requires an institution that collects this personal data or processes this personal data to implement organizational or technical measures that will ensure the protection of this personal data. Thank you.
Ghislaine, just a quick question. In terms of the data protection and privacy law, is it being rolled out at the moment? I know we talk a lot about it in terms of what it will do, but what is its status at the moment? And what's the rollout plan, you know, especially to sensitize and educate Rwandan institutions and Rwandan users alike?
Thank you, Diana. I hope you can hear me. Regarding the rollout of the new law, the law was passed in October 2021, which is just last year, and it gives a transition period of 2 years, which will end in October 2023. And in that period, the NCSA will work as the supervisory authority, will work with different institutions, private, public, to make sure that we have guidelines or policies or measures or controls in place that will help institutions to comply with this new law. In the coming days and the coming month, the NCSA will roll out the plan that helps an implementation guide that helps an institutions to know what the law requires from each one of them. And also, we are also planning to conduct capacity building sessions and awareness sessions to make sure that individuals which the law comes to protect understand how this law applies to them and how this law will help to ensure that their personal data is secure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ghislaine. And just a kind reminder to our attendees, we have 15 so far on this webinar. Just to put your questions, prepare them. You can ask them in the Q&A box. You can ask them in the chat. You can, raise your hand. I will definitely be reading them out because, all of us in one way or another conduct, we transact financially, whether it's on digital platforms such as Momo, mobile money, whether it's on online using your online bank details. We all at one point or another, more than ever, are transacting online or on digital platforms. So cybersecurity in this realm is very, very important. I'd like to go to the next panelist, Deborah. Thank you very much again for joining us. And it's not your first time here. Ghislaine talked about how they work. NCSA works with the National Bank of Rwanda to look at how they can, standardize and regulate financial institutions' services when it comes to ensuring they adhere to cybersecurity standards. So my question to you is, how does the National Bank of Rwanda ensure that banks in the country have standardized systems and governance so that they do not fall prey to cyber attacks? Over to you, Deborah.
Diana, thank you for having me again. Thank you, GetSafe Online, for organizing this webinar. To start, I'd like to thank Sarah and Ghislaine, who've spoken before me. Those were really key points that you've touched on. Like Ghislaine mentioned, we do work closely together, and based on the cyber strategy and the data protection law, as the regulator of the financial institutions, we have also tried to have our own regulatory frameworks and guidelines and directives and policies in place. But like she mentioned, we do this as a joint effort, and I'd really like to thank the NCSA for the support and for how we're continuing to work together. The financial sector is made up of very many financial institutions. It's not just banks. Actually, there's microfinance institutions, there's insurances, and there's payment service providers. And it's a really large and it's a large ecosystem, and it has been under attack in the recent past due to the rise of digitization, due to a lot of new digital channels, automations, and other advancements in technologies. That's why we found it very, very key that such conversations are taking place, that there is so much emphasis on cybersecurity. So thank you. Thank you so much. I hope this continues, and I hope we'll be able to get the word out and have more awareness. So to answer your question, Diana, what initiatives are in place or are we involved in as the central bank to ensure that financial institutions are keeping themselves safe or have standardized systems and governance that allow them not to fall prey to cyber attacks? We have several in place, but I would like to highlight three key ones. The first one, as I started mentioning, is a regulatory framework that's in place, and that has been in line with the cyber strategy that is putting into consideration the data protection law. We try to update it, and after the data protection law was communicated, we tried to make sure that the regulations we have in place are also updated. These regulations are for banks to be able to know what requirements there are, what requirements we have, what restrictions, policies, procedures, standards, directives, and guidelines. So the key regulations that the banks have in regards to cybersecurity are the regulation on cybersecurity, the regulation on business continuity, and the regulation on outsourcing. And I would like to talk in detail about the regulation on cybersecurity in particular, because this regulation starts off with making sure that banks are aware of the cyber risks out there. So they have to do 5 key things to identify, protect, detect, and have a response and recovery. Now, what are they identifying? They're identifying the risks at hand, so that we ask them to be able to identify their risk profile, tell us what their risk appetite is, and have an outlined threat profile. That's under identification. And under protection, after identifying the risks that are at hand, how are you going to protect yourself from them? So we do require that the banks are aware of this and have it in a written format in the form of an information security program. Information security documentation include information security policies and procedures that have to be updated. As you know, the cybersecurity or the threat landscape is evolving at a very, very fast pace. Therefore, quarterly, biannually, annually, these banks have to show us and present to us the changes that are taking place in their systems and what they're doing to protect them. Then there's also detection. This is very key because, yes, you know the risks that are out there, but if you are under a certain risk, how are you going to detect it? So we require banks to carry out tests, to carry out scans of their environments, also known as vulnerability assessments, and they have to present to us biannual vulnerability assessment reports, and also annual penetration tests. This shows us that they are trying to secure themselves by first knowing what is at stake, what risks they are trying to face. Then the fourth point is response. So you have identified, you are detecting the risks that are at hand. Now, how are you going to respond? So we require incident response capabilities from all of these banks. We also require them to carry out tabletop exercises. This is where they have an incident response capability discussion where they look at threat scenarios. And this also shows the involvement of their management and their board members to show that this is not just something, it's not an isolated case, but is left for the IT department, but to show that this is a risk, that there is acknowledgement of it, and there is awareness across the leadership of the bank. And when we see involvement of the management and the board members of the bank, then there is adequate allocation of resources in terms of adequate staffing, who are given adequate training, and then also resources in terms of the tools that are required to carry out all of these tests. It requires a lot of tools, and it comes at a cost. But we always encourage them, saying it's better you incur the costs now and know what you're dealing with, than when the adversary comes and you know, you pay either way. The last point is on recovery. Response preparedness and effective business continuity plans ensure that there is a recovery plan in case of any attack. How are you prepared to ensure that there is business continuity? Do you have maybe a backup plan? Do you have a disaster recovery site? And do you carry out continuous tests? So we require all of these banks to show this to us, to show us the plan of the 5 points of identification and detection and response and recovery. So they have to show this to us in their information security policies and procedures. And then they also have to show us that they have cybersecurity controls in place. And we do an offsite analysis of all of this documentation, but then we also take another step where we go to the banks and do an on-site inspections, where now we see firsthand, okay, we did receive these this data, these reports, and we did go through them, but is that what is actually happening on the ground? So we also carry out our own examinations and evaluate their internal controls. We see if they have adequate management of information systems, and we see if everything is in line with their strategy evaluation. And last but not least, I think I've mentioned this before in this platform, but we do have a fraud prevention forum where we put together the banks through their Rwandan Bank Association, and every quarter they have to meet with the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, and they have to have close reporting of what has been happening, if there have been any fraud cases, and we do give them recommendations. And they tell us they update us on the implementation status of the previous recommendations. So in a nutshell, those are the few strategies that we have in place, and a few key points that we have identified as how we are trying to be on top of things and make sure that all banks have standardized systems, and that they're trying to secure themselves more and more, and they're not going to fall prey to cyber attacks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Always great to have you on these webinars, especially when it comes to financial, transactions. Very comprehensive and detailed feedback. I can see some questions are coming in, and please, I'd like to encourage our attendees to keep on, just putting them in the Q&A section, or just even raise your hand or put it in the chat. Andrew, the next question is for you, the only gentleman on this all women's panel. Well, not all women's, but mostly women's panel. So thank you very much for joining us once again. And my question to you, Andrew, you're here in your capacity, like I said, you wear many hats, but you're here in your capacity as a cybersecurity researcher and analyst. And in your experience over several years that you've been in this particular field, what are some of the most common cyber attacks when it comes to financial services in Rwanda? And how can institutions protect themselves against the cyber threats? If you could give us some practical examples of some of these, sort of the nature of these attacks. Over to you, Andrew.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Diana. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists for covering most of the things that I was going to talk about, but yeah, I'm going to be going into more details, probably technical details, but please feel free to stop me if I get too technical and if you want me to discuss more about certain topics. And one thing I love about this field is that it's very dynamic. Every day I wake up in the morning, and if I check my Twitter feed, I see something new that's been discovered on different applications that are running out there. So this only tells you that how dangerous and how dynamic this field is, and how we need to raise awareness and make people more aware about the different issues that can occur when they're interacting online. So one of the biggest and easiest way, I would say, to hack into an organization, and these actually apply to any institution that has a digital infrastructure, not only applying to banks and other financial institutions. Phishing, I believe Sarah mentioned this in the first on our first presentation. So phishing is part of social engineering, whereby a user is tricked and you require a user to have some sort of interaction with whatever you are going to send to them. So what an attacker would do would craft a message in a way that it looks very attractive on the other side, on the recipient side, that they would eventually lead them to click on a link or download a file, which could be riddled with viruses. Now, one of the biggest examples of this is that any documents that you download online, mostly Microsoft Office documents, say a Word document that you're going to download online. A good thing about some of these operating systems is that they have their own inbuilt solutions to help you detect or to alert you that there could be a problem wherever you're doing. So if you download something from the internet, basically from your email or from a website, the first thing, if it's a Microsoft Word document or Excel document, Microsoft will warn you, and it will tell you that, hey, you're downloading something from the internet, and this could potentially be having viruses inside it. I don't know if you've seen that before, but it's usually always happens like that. And they do give you a chance that if you really want to edit this, click on edit. Now, why do they do this? The Microsoft Word and Excel itself have a feature called macros. Most of the normal day-to-day use of Microsoft Word, that doesn't really require you to use macros themselves, which these macros are more of a programming interface behind a file. And what it does is it could give an attacker a way of gaining access to your computer. So also, if a document contains a macro inside it, Microsoft will warn you again that this document contains macros. Now, I'm not saying that macros are bad. They are used by different professionals out there, and to process very large documents and things like that. So what a threat actor can do is that they create some sort of malicious code and embed it inside the document. And all they have to do is send you a message that will entice you to open that document. And basically that would lead you to giving them access to your computer. So easiest example, you could find the document, let's say that's coming from, that's going to HR. Remember, we have HR departments in, let's say, financial institutions, right? And let's say you're recruiting. But then if someone is able to send their CV in a Microsoft Word document, and the HR department people, remember, they're receiving hundreds of CVs. They don't have time to look at the different issues that could occur with their computers. Now, if someone sends their CV that has, let's say, a malicious macro inside, then you are susceptible to having a cyber attack on your computer. And once they have access to your computer, that means they have access to the entire staff network. I know if you've noticed this, if you enter into any, let's say, institution or any company, usually you'd have separation of the networks, right? You'd have a guest network and a staff network. So if you have a guest network, that means you are actually a guest in that building. So you don't really have access to most of the important applications that the institution and the staff uses. Now, if you only have to if you have access to a computer owned by HR, it's quite simple as that you already have access to the entire institution's infrastructure. So this is just one example. There are many more other examples. It's quite simple to trick someone to do malicious things, but without them knowing. You can easily drop a USB that's labeled on salaries for 2022. And someone, trust me, you would be super excited to open this, to plug this USB inside. So how do we actually stop this? Because you're dealing with many different people in your organization. Some of them are old, some of them are young. They all come from different fields. So how do you fix this? It's programs such as this Get Safe Online that can actually help fix this. And that means, I think one of my panelists also, one of my colleagues in the panel have mentioned that so it has to be the entire institution involved. So it doesn't mean that it's only IT who's only going to be doing this. It's a communal, or everyone in the institution is responsible for any of the infrastructure. So you train users, and this has to start from the top management, from the board members, to the lowest level of the employees themselves. And other technical means, they include using malware or malware scanners for mail systems. Most of the email systems have different enterprise solutions for scanning for emails for such malicious files. And if you apply the right rules and filtering rules, then you'll be somehow safe. But somehow, once in a while, these files get through, and then you find someone opening a malicious file. So also having a nice antivirus software, usually they detect such malicious activities, but not to 100%. It's usually, sometimes something will slip through it, and things could get really bad for you. The other point I would like to mention is ransomware, which has really picked up pace over the years, and it's quite a dangerous thing. It comes in different forms, and then what it basically does, it holds your information until a ransom is paid, which is quite crazy if you think about it. And if you're dealing, let's say, with a bank, let's say biggest bank in Rwanda, and then someone encrypts all your information, that means the entire country. If it's the biggest bank, it means it covers the entire country, the entire population. So if they encrypt all your information and you don't have, let's say, a standard backup solution or a disaster recovery program in place, then you are susceptible to having a very bad day on your side. So things like these ransomwares have really picked up pace over the years. And I'm sure if you've been following the news, you've seen threats, different ransomware gangs being caught on TV or things like that. So it's an active thing being exploited and being used. And there's not really an easy way of fixing this than practicing proper cybersecurity hygiene. That means don't click on any link, don't download any file just like that, or just mainly just proper cyber hygiene. And also, if you're on the tech side, you have to make sure that all your systems are up to date. Sometimes you can have an antivirus that's actually up to date, but it's still, you will still get hit by a ransomware. So all these things, lastly, you need to have a backup solution in place. It doesn't mean doesn't matter if you're an institution or by yourself, an individual, you need to have backup of all your files. because if you get hit by ransomware, unless you have the money to pay for it, then you won't be able to have all your information back. So moving forward, another, which is more a bit of a technical thing, is having web application vulnerability. So you have banks that have these web portals that clients can access the information, or the information, all their details. And this doesn't only apply to banks. Basically any institution that has access to web applications, that's giving access to the web applications. So if you have not designed it well, or you've not followed the correct coding practices, then you are eventually susceptible to cyber attacks, which eventually lead you to leaking information. We've seen so many times that people get their information leaked online. There's a website called I Got Pawned. If you go there now, you can just give a quick search with your email address and see if you've ever been pawned before. And you'd be surprised that your email address might appear that you've been hacked before. Why is this so? It's because you were signed up to a website that was hacked and their information was exposed online. So how do we solve this? We have appliances such as web application firewalls, which can be a bit expensive sometimes to manage. If an institution can afford it, well and good. If you can't, then there are other measures. So there are things like honeypots, which are more like a way to trick someone who's tried to hack you already. So you basically set up a dummy server inside your network, and then you wait. So you set it up in a way that the hacker will not miss it, and then when they hit it, you get an alert that, hey, there's something wrong happening in my network. So if that happens, you know what to do exactly in order to stop this person or this malicious actor. And the last thing I'd like to say about the measures for the web application vulnerabilities is having a responsible vulnerability disclosure program. So this is quite controversial, because this what basically means the things like called ethical hackers out there, people who are actually qualified to hack your computer, but in an ethical way. It sounds crazy, I know. How do you allow someone to do something which is more in line it's more like a criminal act, right? But saying you're doing good, right? So if you have a responsible vulnerability disclosure program, that means you are able to, you're allowing people to test your system, right? And report these vulnerabilities. And possibly if you can reward them somehow. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be, it could be, I don't know, clothes or something like that, or something interesting, or put them in your Hall of Fame. So many companies adopting to this, and in form of bug bounty programs, which is quite a new field, but it's quite an inspiring initiative, because many companies are starting to see so many changes and so many vulnerabilities that they never knew about. You can have your own internal security team, but still there's some things, if you have an extra eye to look at your systems at an affordable cost, then it doesn't really hurt you. The next point is DDoS attacks. These ones, distributed denial of service. Sometimes, I know you've seen sometimes where you try to pay for something and then the system is down, probably down. This can happen depending on different issues. So one of the main pillars of security is being available online 99% of the time, right? So if your system is down, that means there's something wrong. So if it can come even in the form of password guessing, so to speak. So a good thing about many of the web portals, at least the one that I've used, if your password is tested so many, it's basically hard to perform a password guessing attack on the bank I use, because they've implemented a two-factor authentication measure. So this is a very interesting thing because you see, you have a password, right? That's one factor. What do I mean by this? That's something that you know, right? That's for the password thing. What if that's not safe enough? Because someone can come up with your password easily by just guessing your date or your name or where you work or your position, right? And you just come up with a password. You can say, my password is probably, this person works in tourism. He's probably using a password of tourism at 2022. That's quite possible. So how do you secure this person from, if someone has guessed their password, you add in an extra layer, which is for something that person has, the two factors. So you will be alerted on your phone that, hey, you need to approve this sign-in request. If you approve it, then you get access. So these things really help out sometimes when you're dealing with web application and web application issues and also DDoS attacks. And then
Andrew,
yeah, sure.
I know there's a huge list that you're going to share, but the interest of time, we're trying to keep this in 1 hour. But
yeah,
I think yeah, if you could just after this webinar, we'll still have this conversation online. But I think the examples you've listed are quite comprehensive. I mean, they're quite detailed.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We could go on,
Thank
but in the interest of time, personally, I want you to just write down maybe in the chat that website that you mentioned. I got pawned or pawned, I don't know.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll share that.
I had no idea about that, and I'm just.
Yeah.
I just really will be alarmed if I see my email address there. And yeah, I'm hoping that won't happen. But, you know, thank you for the very practical examples you gave of what
Thank you.
cyber threats look like, you know, on financial institutions, you know, getting an email and the HR human resource, you know, opens it and it spreads across the network. Oh, okay, thank you, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, thank you so much for that. It's really, really eye-opening. We have a series of questions that I'm hoping we'll have time to answer. And I'm just going to read them out. They're in the Q&A box. I think everyone can see the Q&A box. And I'll kick off with the first questions that came in. So, well, I don't know which one to start with, but so we have the first one that was from, you know, they're all anonymous, so I can't tell amongst the, you know, the 20 participants we have who's sending the questions. But the first one is the process of adding your Visa card number on the internet. It seems really easy and it can be easily stolen. I suggest they tighten the procedure more. So this is a comment saying they suggest they tighten the procedure more of adding Visa card numbers on the internet. Of course, I'll come back to our panelists to see if they have a response to this. Anonymous attendee also says it would be very helpful if people get to know how Pond works. I think Andrew has shared the link on chat to everyone, and I think he explained to us, you know, if the result of being pawned is because he subscribed to a website that got hacked and released all its information, including your email, and that's why you'll probably see your email on the website that he put forward. The next question really is to, well, I guess it's to all our panelists. And the question is, what frameworks are there for financial institutions to be able to share threat information? For instance, if Bank A was hit, is there a way they could share information with the rest of the institutions and the name of helping them get ready for the same threat? Great question. Number two, is it in the public's right to know about breaches and incidents that happened? If yes, where can one find such information? Very good question, because, you know, our money is in these institutions. We should have a right to know if they've been their data has been breached or the security has been breached online. Another question, Andrew, how can I protect my domain from being used for phishing, email spoofing? Another question is to Deborah, Deborah, what does you know, the Central Bank of Rwanda, National Bank of Rwanda, what does Benner think of Bitcoin and other digital currencies mostly used by hackers in ransomware attacks? So I don't know how we want to kick this off, but you know, if we could start with any response to the Visa card on the internet from the panelists.
I'm happy to share some advice on that we provide at Get Safe Online. I think whenever you share your card details when making a purchase online, don't save it in the browser. And if they ask, if the website asks you to save your card details for next time, don't save them, so that every time you make a purchase, input that information and then make sure it's not saved for future use. That will help protect you online. Another tip that one of our experts recommends is if you have one specific card that you use for online transactions only, you just use that card whenever you're making a purchase online and use a different card in the real world every day. Then it just means you can manage and control exactly what you're buying online, and it's only one card that is being compromised. But by not saving your details online when you make a purchase, that should be a big help. I don't know, Deborah or Ghislaine may have more to add on that, but that would be our advice from Get Safe Online on that point.
Absolutely, thank you very much, Sarah. Yes, do not be saving those details on the on the web browser when you're making an online transaction. The second question I'd like the panelists to answer is how can banks communicate with each other to warn them of impending cyber threats, and is it in the public's right to know of these cyber security data breaches? Deborah, would you like to take that, or Ghislaine?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you for this excellent question. Actually, all the questions are really good regarding information sharing. So regulation on cybersecurity stipulates that all banks, all financial institutions have to disclose all and reports monthly to the central bank. So there is that kind of one-way communication between, actually it's two ways, between banks and the regulator, but between the banks, interbank sharing of information has not been introduced yet, but it is quite key, and we are in the process of launching what is called an FS-ISAC, the Financial Sector Information Sharing Association. And as the question is stated, it says, I think if I recall well, it says because it would help other banks not fall prey to the same attack. That is in the same spirit that we are going to introduce it and require the banks to say, okay, we have fallen prey to this attack, this is how we responded to it, and get the word out, because as I started mentioning, we are part of one ecosystem, and we are only as strong as our weakest link. So yes, this is a great initiative, and even though it has not yet been implemented, it is in the works. And if we benchmark on other jurisdictions that are way advanced than us, then we should start doing that now or yesterday as soon as possible. And maybe if Dana, if you allow me, I could also address the question on Bitcoin, so that we can try and catch up with time. So the question is what does the BNR stand on Bitcoin? So according to regulation, in the past, Rwanda has been, or our jurisdiction has been, quite silent on cryptocurrencies and many of these emerging technologies per se, but we are very aware that we cannot shy away from any of these emerging technologies, fintechs. So we are actually currently in the middle of a study to say, okay, in the current state, we do not have any regulation on it, and it is quite alarming because you're not going to just approve or allow for something that is going to be difficult to regulate. But then again, we don't regulate for the sake of stifling the public, stifling creativity of people who want to bring fintechs in the country. So towards the end of this year, this should be published, and then we will have a stand as a jurisdiction where Bitcoin is. For the moment, currently, under our regulations and our frameworks, we do not cover cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and all the others. So I hope that answers his question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Ghislaine, I don't know if you want to answer any of these questions before I move on to the next question for Andrew.
No, I think Deborah has already highlighted how the information is shared within the financial sector if any incident arises. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ghislaine. Andrew, this question for you is, how can I protect my domain from being used for phishing or email spoofing? As briefly as possible, if you could respond to that question.
Thanks. So one of the first measures that you can use is talking to your data center. Your data center should be having access to your domain name, right? So your domain name has features that can stop someone from spoofing your email. So there are features called the SPF and then the DKIM and also the DARC. So you just contact your domain, I mean your data center for that reason to provide you that. And I believe in Rwanda that's AOS. So they should be able to provide you with a solution. So another thing is that you need to install a mail security software. So there are many vendors out there. One that I've used mostly is Kaspersky. It does a great job in stopping phishing emails and also sometimes spoofing for that reason. So that answers the questions, I hope.
It does. It does. It does. It really does. Thank you so much. And you know, we've come to the end of the conversation. In fact, I think we're slightly ahead of time because we started around 8 minutes later. So we do have this opportunity to just give closing remarks to all of you, Sarah, Andrew, Ghislaine, and Deborah. It's been a very interesting learning experience as well. There's a couple of things I learned that I can't wait to check out after this call. But thank you very much to everyone, especially also to the attendees. Actually, I can see more questions coming in, but I don't know if we have time to address them. But anyway, this is one last question I think I would ask, and I know it's coming from a Get Safe Online Rwanda ambassador. So I'll ask this question, if you could answer it as quickly as possible, and I'll also give way for closing remarks after this. So this question is from Sadra, and Sadra says, I would like to ask if we have measures on protecting our credit cards while buying online, because when somebody has a picture of your card, it is done. You know, if someone took a picture of the back of my card and went online, they could actually shop online. So I think it's quite a valid question, and I'll just, put it out there, like, who would like to quickly have a go at this?
It'd be very interesting to hear from Deborah about this, because in the UK, if you use a credit card to make a purchase online, the credit card protects you. So if it is fraudulent, then you get your money back from the credit card. So in the UK, we always recommend people to buy online using a credit card, because that is a form of insurance and protects you. But I don't know what the legislation is in Rwanda and whether that applies here as well. So I'll pass on to Deborah and see if she can help with that.
Thank you, Sarah. This is an excellent question, because it is still a big challenge here in Rwanda. We currently, most people do not opt for credit cards. Many people are determined to stay out of credit and therefore use debit cards. So our advice is always try as much as possible to keep that information, especially your 3-digit PIN, to yourself. Yes, as the attendee rightly stated, once somebody has that PIN, they're able to shop as much as possible. Obviously, once you get an alert or maybe an SMS notification, and you know that you have not been transacting on that specific site, then banks are always in a position to reverse or to reject that transaction. But this is more of it is more of being a defense, and it is not a very proactive thing. So we are trying to get the banks, we're trying to involve the banks to do, as Andrew stated, to do more of like a two-step authentication process, where instead of just approving any transaction, because of how easy it is for this information to be stolen. So instead of just approving it, where by one click it's already done, where they request you to verify this either on your PIN, either on your phone or on email. This is done for large transactions, but for small transactions, we have had so many cases of people say, hey, I'm not the one who did this sale or this purchase, yet I have been deducted of this amount of money. And then they have to like go on the defense and try to recover it. But yes, please by all means, keep your PINs and your private passwords private. Yeah, thank you.
It's the best you can do, really, to counter this. Ghislaine, your hand is up. Is there something you wanted to say?
Yes, I wanted to add something small regarding the question regarding the security of credit cards. Yes, like Deborah has mentioned, we see that there's still resistance or not a high adoption of using credit cards in Rwanda, but regardless, we still educate people or remind people to make sure that they protect their bank cards, either being debit cards or credit cards, to make sure that first of all you even avoid or do all that you can to make sure that the information regarding your cards, you're the only one aware of them. If you're going to shop somewhere else and they take your cards out of your site, make sure that doesn't happen. Because even if one of the ways that we see that this credit card information or debit card information gets stolen, sometimes they may take your card and or someone takes your card and you're not sure of what they're going to do once they get hold of your card. So we encourage people to make sure that if they hand out their cards, they're still able to see what their card how their cards are being used. And another thing is to encourage, if possible, if you can, for a particular bank that a person may get services, their financial services from, to make sure that either you have a way of getting like transaction statements, because it's a way of helping someone to detect any transaction that happens on their bank accounts, so that even if by some misfortune someone gets hold of your card's information, if they transact, you'll be alerted as it happens, and you can alert your particular bank that something suspicious is happening on your account, and they'll be able to stop it before it's too late. So as we are still looking for ways to protect the card numbers, the CVV numbers or the PINs, but we also encourage people to protect their money, their cards, as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Just very quickly, closing remarks about the conversation we've had. I'll kick off with you, Sarah, Andrew, Ghislaine, and finally, Deborah.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's been a really helpful conversation, and it's interesting to see that it's not only your own responsibility to try and keep yourself as safe as possible online, but working with cybersecurity and thinking about antivirus and sort of the hardware that you can put on your own computers to help keep you safe, as well as your own behaviour. So I hope it's been a useful conversation for those listening. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Over to you, Andrew.
Oh, thanks so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. My last word would be all of us need to adopt a zero trust methodology whereby we don't trust anything when you're going online. And that's the best way to approach your cyber hygiene. Thank you.
Absolutely, can't agree with you more there. Most of the time we keep on saying at Get Safe Online Rwanda, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So, stick to that when it comes to anything online. Over to you, Ghislaine.
Thank you, Diana, and thanks to the panelists for their contribution on this topic. One last point will be to encourage people to keep on educating themselves on the latest cyber trends and how they can protect themselves, and also follow up with the advisories or the best practices that these financial institutions provide, or our institution or the central bank, but also if they suspect anything out of the ordinary is happening on their systems or applications, to report it so that it's addressed on time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ghislaine. It's been great, always is having NCSA part of the cybersecurity discussions, especially how to promote online safety. Thank you once again. Deborah, over to you.
Thank you, Diana. Once again, it's such a privilege to be part of this discussion. We are involved on a daily basis with ensuring that all the financial institutions are securing their systems, because it is in our mandate to ensure that the whole financial ecosystem is sound, because it's in our interest that everybody's assets are kept secure. All the Rwandans and the Rwandan population assets are secure. But then again, I want to throw the ball out there to every single individual, because in as much as the banks are trying to keep their system secure, it is also everyone's responsibility to make sure that they are also taking security very seriously, making sure that you do not just access your bank accounts on a public network. You're not just giving out your private information, private pins or passwords, and you're also not getting weak passwords. I think that's a whole other topic, but make sure you use strong passwords, make sure you're using trusted sites. This has been mentioned, I think, even though we are in a digital era, a lot of people are not keeping up with the trends. So just keep yourself educated, keep yourself aware, and like Andrew said, zero trust. Before you click, just assume that everyone is an adversary, and think twice, and that way at least you will be a little bit safer. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Thank you very much to you, Sarah, Andrew, Ghislaine, especially representing your institutions. It's been an honor. This is the last webinar until further notice from Get Safe Online Rwanda. But we've been doing this since 2020, and the campaigns are usually on an annual basis. So thank you so much for everyone. It's been a great webinar, really good attendance, really good questions, really good insights from the panelists, as it always is. So I'm really, really honored to have been part of this discussion as a moderator. And yeah, thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Diana.
Thanks, everyone.
Diana.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good weekend. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.